I'm Maria, also known as Eurothic4000 on YouTube, and I tend to cover horror games and just like weird little titles, usually on the PS2. I kind of like to talk about mainly their visuals and development history, and I try to interview developers where I can too, so lots of celebrations of games, I suppose. So my pick is Alan Wake 2. Well, so it's a continuation of the first game, but it also changes genre quite a bit. The first one, to me, felt more like, I guess, action-ish. I don't know, it was a bit of a weird one, and to be honest, I didn't really click with the first game. But in the second game, it goes for much more of a survival horror formula, and it follows a writer called Alan Wake, and he's stuck in something called the Dark Place, and he's trying to get out, and there's another character you play as called Saga Anderson, who basically tries to help him escape and solve this underlying mystery, which I won't go into because spoilers, but yeah, that's like the general gist. So I played like maybe an hour of it when the PS5 remaster came out, but I wasn't feeling it. I don't know what happened. Because I do really love Twin Peaks, and I like Deadly Premonition as well, and that kind of media, but it just didn't stick with me. So I ended up just looking at like story recaps for it before going into Alan Wake 2. But yeah, that was about it. I'm really happy with how they went about like gameplay and the visuals and stuff in the second game, so it definitely stuck more. Yeah, so I loved Control. It's like one of my favorite games. So seeing that kind of come into Alan Wake 2, I think is probably what really pulled me in. There's this mixed media approach that they have, and seeing that basically in full force in Alan Wake 2 was like insane. It was just so satisfying seeing everything they learned from their past games just kind of, I guess, come to a climax in this game. Yeah, so I was initially excited because they did market it as survival horror, and I'm a big survival horror fan. But I would say I wasn't as hyped up as maybe some other people were, purely because of my experience with the first game, so kind of had like tempered expectations in a sense. But yeah, while I was playing, I mean, I think it was pretty much in like the first hour, I was hooked. I was like, okay, this is it. This is good. Well, in terms of the Mind Place, I think I really enjoyed that because it felt like a safe room. And I guess it technically was, but just having like all these functions within that room as well for it to make sense. And because the Saga Anderson is a, I guess, detective, right? So she would have like this case board and a desk where she can profile people. And you kind of have to use those features to be able to progress in the game and I guess piece together the story. There's some times where it is required to do that, but a lot of the time it isn't. Yet there was something so satisfying about putting these little images and like text, little sticky notes on the case board and having it all form together in like one flowing chart, I guess. Like, was it Miro, the app? Yeah, so yeah, that was really enjoyable. I do wonder though if that could have been expanded in a sense mechanically with the case board. I'm not too sure how they would do that, but I feel like there's a lot of potential there. It's like this evolved form of what they did in Control, and it kind of makes this visual style that is just so unique, and I feel like that's something that's very difficult to accomplish, especially like in modern day times, and with AAA games especially. I feel like they kind of a lot of the times don't want to take the risks associated with having something quite different about it, whether that's gameplay or art style or anything like that. So it's just refreshing, especially for AAA. It's so good to see games like that take risks again. Yeah, there's one chapter in particular. I feel like it encompasses sort of Remedy's creativity in a sense, and it's just difficult to talk about because I really don't want to like give anything away. But if you play the game, you will know exactly what chapter I'm talking about. And it's kind of funny to see like on Twitter and stuff, people will be like, oh my god, I played that chapter. It's amazing. And yeah, it's just really cool the way they do it. It's visually very impressive. The way that the environment is manipulated is just so cool. I don't think I've played anything like it, so
how would you recommend somebody who's like, who maybe might be interested in this game and wants to play it? First thing, would you say that they would need to know much about Alan Wake 1 to like fully appreciate this?
Yeah, definitely. I think even just watching the story on YouTube like I did is required. I think you can definitely play it, but you would just be so confused at points, and I think certain story beats just wouldn't hit as hard. So, I mean, you can watch a story recap in like 10-15 minutes, so you might as well just do that. In terms of my game of the year, it was between Resident Evil 4 Remake and Alan Wake 2, but just purely because Alan Wake 2 is unique. Like, it's not a remake of anything or whatever, but it just does so much new stuff and still has like a really good level of polish with it. I have to give it to Alan Wake 2. Like, Resident Evil 4 Remake was fantastic and I loved it, but yeah, I guess just the creativity and uniqueness of it is why I definitely have to go with Alan Wake for sure. The only thing is, there are jump scares, and a lot of them, I think that was probably my main criticism, is one of the levels is just constant jump scare. And it kind of got to a point where it was more annoying than like scary. So yeah, I mean, but that was just maybe like a couple of the levels overall. Just a warning for people, I guess, because I know there are some players who like to avoid jump scares, or at least like to be aware, so yeah, there's quite a few. Surreal, pretend Twin Peaks is one word, and identity, I think. Yeah, I would say identity, just it's not like anything else. It's really impressive.
My name is wyattjoseph. I make video essays on YouTube under that name. I also mod for Jacob Geller, which is not normally a big thing, but you know, I was on Swordstream this year, so that's something. But mainly I just make video essays on YouTube. I will probably have a short video on Lethal Company out by the time this goes up, and another one after that on Red Dead 2, hopefully not far after. I really like Lethal Company. It's kind of, you know, the reason we're in this is, I guess it's unofficially probably my second favorite game of the year. It's a very close runner-up, and honestly, the main thing is it came out very late, and it is in early access, so you could argue it's not really out. But I think it's like the most exciting, for me personally, I don't know, the most exciting multiplayer game I've played in years. And it's interesting because it does it doesn't do a ton that's like extremely novel. It's very simple, but it's just an excellent like story generator. It's very, very silly. The game I want to talk about is Mario Wonder, Super Mario Bros. Wonder.
Oh wow, excellent. Tell you what, let's go off to a planet. You can tell me more about Super Mario's Wonders thing.
Sounds good. It's, you know, the latest 2D Mario. I think the first 2D Mario in literally a decade. And you know, on the Switch. Thing about that is yeah. You know, like, I mean, I guess it's, for most people, I would say it's probably just the wonder effects and like how it looks. I don't know if it has a single selling point. Like, you know, the multiplayer is really fascinating. And I think most people were just enamored by how it looks, and it does look really good. To me, it's really just, it's a lot of little things that come together, and it's like the fact that, for me, it's like the fact that there's no timer and that you can like walk backwards through the level, like makes such a big difference. All right, I'm going in. Okay, well, the wonder effects are really fascinating because they, for the most part, they seem to take from a lot of like indie, there's nothing here yet, a lot of indie games and a lot of like Rayman, a lot of stuff in the new game reminds me of like the Rayman Legends. I'm gonna try and cross here. Rayman Legends. Just like, I don't know, trying to make a very un-Mario, I guess. Pulling a lot of other influences that, I don't know, Nintendo hasn't really done. They all feel like, there's a few wonder effects that are literally like one of them is just the game 2D and top D.
Yeah, it flips the level on its side. Oh, bomber.
Yeah. Oh, I hear something. It's so hard to focus while also running around in this game.
No, that's totally fair.
Yeah, what was I saying? Another interesting thing is, the one effects are really cool and all, but ultimately, like, I don't know, they weren't like the main, they weren't the main selling point to me ultimately. But other than other video games, you know, it's clear that a lot of influence was taken from Mario Maker, because a lot of people said like, oh, Nintendo can't make another 2D Mario after this, and I kind of thought the same thing because, you know, it makes the Mario formula so bare, and I wasn't sure how they would do a sequel. And the little like break time levels, you know, get pretty experimental in their structure and reminds me a lot of what people are doing in Mario Maker. Yeah, and I really like that kind of thing. Even this game, it does feel like it pushes the structure pretty far, and like I don't know how they do a sequel to this unless it's just more of the same. Like, again, the biggest selling point for me is the way they structured the game in general. I don't remember the way back.
Should we try jumping over here? There's a closed door,
Yeah.
which may mean it might be a wayward game.
Apparently, like, the monsters spawn from the vents, like all of them.
Did they?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, do I have arachnophobia mode on? Oh, I should. Oh, what was that? Hello? Anyway, Mario Wonder. I know you died, James. Mario Wonder. Oh shit. Think about the Mario games. The thing about the a fire exit. Can I do this? Oh, no, I couldn't.
Oh, dang it. Well,
Were you enjoying me trying to continue the interview?
I genuinely did appreciate you still.
It was, I was terrified. It was very hard to focus, but I've never really liked 2D Mario, with the exception of Mario 3 was like the first. It was Mario 3 Advance was the first video game I ever played. I think that's what it was called. You know, the Game Boy Advance remake, and you know, I like that, and I like some of the earlier ones, but for lack of a better word, the Wii Marios, the, you know, DS Marios, they all just felt kind of soulless and empty. And for me, I think it was because there just was no like larger incentive to play the levels. Like, there was no collectibles or anything, which was, I guess, the main thing I really needed in order for them to like stick with me. Like, they all just felt like going through the motions. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but that's how I felt. And so Mario Wonder, a lot of that was the aesthetic. So when I saw Mario Wonder, I was immediately like, okay, this could be good based on the visuals alone. But then like I saw like the Wonder effects and the 10 coins, and as simple as that, I was just like, okay, collectibles, like, you know, maybe this will actually make the game feel more substantial to me. So I was just kind of hoping for not bounce off the game and like actually feel compelled to see it through to the end, and it did that in spades. I play a lot of Switch just like in my bed, handheld, which is funny because most of the people I talk to have really, I think people are pretty down on the Switch this year, which is understandable. Like I'm definitely, you know, feeling it's felt underpowered for years, even though I do love the thing still in a lot of ways. But I'm the only person I know that still plays handheld a lot. I do like playing it on the TV, but I really only did that if I was playing it with someone else. I played it with my partner a lot, which was fun. But for the most part, like, since I was more into it than her and than like any of my friends, because I played it a bit too, 4-player co-op when I went to their house. But I played most of the game after work, just lying in my bed, playing on my Switch. Got, especially some of those challenge levels, the Switch buttons are so tiny, it really hurt my thumbs. Yeah, so not always super fun, but for the most part, I think like such a good handheld game. Looks really good on the Switch. At first, the thing that surprised me the most was at first, I thought it felt really different, like, and I can't really put my finger on it, but you know, it was like built from the ground up, I guess, not based on the new Super Mario Bros. Engine, but just like, I don't know, it felt heavier or something, and that was a good sign. I had to get used to it, but I mean, it's that like the pure like game feel, just like Mario's jump felt different. And I mean, they changed a lot of the sound effects too, and subtle stuff, I guess, but overall, you know, did for the most part, yeah, exceeded my expectations. It ended up being like, I mean, a lot of great games this year, and I honestly would probably describe it as a, you know, obviously it's my game of the year, so definitely exceeded my expectations. Going in. It's simple, but let's see, the search party, I think that's what it's called. I really was not vibing with it at first. I was like, okay, this is, you know, it's this really esoteric, well, there's a couple of them, but there are these really esoteric levels. Oh, there's a bunch of steam. Hello?
So what were you saying about esoteric objects?
Yeah, like, you know, it was just such an awful, it was really like experimenting, like, it felt like those Mario Maker levels that just really, you know, like people build like computers in Mario Maker, and it didn't feel like that experimental, but really pushing the boundaries of all of the objects, and just like what you can do with the platformer, I guess, because you're supposed to like find hidden blocks and like push walls and just do a bunch of strange stuff. But then you play it with people, with multiplayer, and I can't remember what they're called, the standees. You know, people put down standees, and you can watch their ghosts, and it becomes this like collaborative puzzle solving, like treasure hunt experience, and it's so cool. Even on the regular levels too, like I've had a lot of really good moments. I've seen people like pointing secrets out to each other, and like people waiting to jump on the flagpole with other people, and it's just like it's surprisingly charming. Like I was like confused when they announced the mode at first. I was like, okay, you know, very Nintendo thing to do, not have traditional multiplayer, but I really like how it worked out. Honestly, the biggest thing is it's just extremely fun. Like there's like maybe levels I didn't vibe with as much, and that's like the strongest criticism I could throw against it. Like I went in expecting to think it was like maybe a 7 or 8 on a good day, and I just had a blast from start to finish. I had a blast in multiplayer, and then like, you know, playing couch co-op is what I was originally excited for, but then I ended up really loving just playing by myself with ghosts online. Yeah, no, the biggest thing is just like, it is, I don't know, as charming as it looks. I mean, it has some of the best animation I've seen in a game, honestly. It just like exudes personality and charm, and it really, oh my god. I think we can get past it. It's just like, it's just right here. Especially for just 2 folks. I guess I'm looking forward to this being Game of the Year 2024, maybe.
So I'm Chariot Rider, and I make videos about weird esoteric games. In terms of work that like I've made recently, stuff like my Comer video or my video on ZK maps, both of which are very weird niche esoteric games. Like earlier this year, I was looking into a game called Cookies Bustle, which is a 90s Japanese adventure game. And honestly, like including footage of this game in your video might be a bit risky.
Yeah, I'll use a JPEG or I'll find a creative way to show people. Well, I was going to say, so just for clarification, the game that you want to talk about today isn't Cookies Bustle, is that correct?
No, Cookies Bustle is just emblematic of the games I oftentimes find myself digging into. The game I want to talk about today is very different, and in fact, you could argue it's not even a full game per se, but it is rather a DLC. So I want to talk about The Sultan's Ascent DLC for Age of Empires 4. Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, one of the other things that I'm a huge fan of is strategy games. Growing up, I was a competitive chess player, good enough to win local chess tournaments. And I always love, turn-based, strategy games, stuff like chess, stuff like Advance Wars, those kinds of games were always a lot of fun for me. And, I also love board games and pretty much any kind of strategy game. But the one arena of strategy that I never really stepped into growing up was the RTS. And, I tried a couple of times, but it is admittedly it's something you have to pick up. It's kind of like how, if you put like someone who's never played a game before in front of like, a controller and ask them to play a first person shooter game, like, they might not know like, oh, the right analog stick is how you move around the camera, right? It's very awkward for a lot of, and, RTS games just are built on such a different lexicon and mechanical basis that, like, even if you play a lot of video games, you might not necessarily be familiar with, how RTS games work. And that was always what I ran into when I tried jumping to RTS games. But, gradually over this year, I've been getting more and more familiar with it. And the game that kind of broke through that fully was Age of Empires 4. So Age of Empires is a RTS game about historical civilizations. So you'll play as people like, the English, the French, the Malians, with the new DLC, the Byzantines, and, every group is, pretty different mechanic. But generally, you go out and you have villagers, and they collect resources, and then you spend these resources on different things. So you can build military with your resources, and these are useful because you can go out and attack your opponent with them. But you can also invest it in some economy stuff. You can build like little buildings that let your resources get dropped off faster. Your villagers don't have to walk as far. Or you could buy upgrades that say like increase the amount of wood that you get. Or rather, your villagers can gather wood faster. Or you can invest this into age ups, which essentially lets you go from the Dark Age to the Feudal Age to the Castle Age to the Imperial Age. And each age up gives new opportunities in the form of new units, new technology, and generally, you want to use some kind of strategy to defeat your opponents. That is generally how Age of Empires works. Whenever I sit down for a night of Age of Empires, one of the first things I'll do is I'll actually boot up a game against the AI. I'll play a game against the AI on hardest, and I'll just like do a single match using my build order that I want to use for that game. Just to kind of like get me back into the swing of, okay, here's all the hotkeys and everything. It's just purely like a warm-up thing, and I think like doing that right before hopping into a game helps me, just kind of acclimatize, like, okay, like, this is the control scheme, we're ready to go. That's kind of the big ritual. I'm not even full. It's hard to take myself back to like before I played Age of Empires, because there definitely was a time beforehand. But like like it was something that I was always interested in. Like the first version of the game I played was like the 2013 re-release, Age of Empires 2 HD or whatever they called it. And like, I played that a little bit, fell off, and then they released Age of Empires Definitive Edition, and then I came into that. And so like, it's always, it's something I've dipped my toes into a couple of times, where like, it has always felt just like it's felt like there's a lot of stuff going on. But I guess maybe one misconception that has maybe like fallen away as I've played more is that like, people don't always know what they're doing. You sometimes see Age of Empires talked about, and it's like, you see these huge armies, and you think, oh wow, like the people who are dominating in this game must be experts who like are just completely like mega brained. When like in reality, like because of how matchmaking works, like you can play against people who are awful at the game and have like fair, if you're not very good at the game, you can still have fair games, even if you're not like, the top level players. And I think, that's maybe where like RTS games do seem a bit intimidating. And in part, this is maybe a bit how people talk about them, where like, people's conception of the game comes from like hearing about StarCraft 2 players who just like mash their keyboard at like 9,000 actions per minute. And it's like, I have a friend who actually released a video about this recently. It's a guide for, new players getting to Age of Empires. But he also spends a lot of time, kind of deconstructing the whole APM myth, where like, you don't have to have 9,000 APM played. You can play the game without having to, be able to do a gazillion things at once. In fact, he even like used me in the video as an example of a low APM player beating a higher APM player. And if you want more information about that, like I recommend going and watching his video. So to other RTS, people maybe have played some stuff genre, but haven't tried Age of Empires 4. Because like I would say Age of Empires 4 is to me like the most engaging and interesting RTS on the market. Age of Empires 2 is very fun, but I like 4 because of its approach to civilization design. Age of Empires 4 is a lot more asymmetric. Every civilization is completely different from every other civilization. Like for instance, the civilization I play, the Byzantines, which were just added with the new DLC. Their whole thing is they build cistern networks, where you build a cistern and you can connect it with aqueducts to other cisterns. And this will buff all of your villagers around the cistern to collect resources faster. And that plays completely different to someone like the Malians, where their whole thing is passive income, where they build like pit mines on stone and gold. And instead of having to have villagers collect gold, it just collects it over time as a building. Having those kinds of matchups is just way more interesting than of Age of Empires 2. On top of also just being pretty intuitive with regards to keyboard commands and all that stuff. To completely new players, I would say Age of Empires 4 does a lot of stuff to kind of bring you in and teach you the basics. It has like the Art of War, which, essentially like goes through what is a build order, and how do you kind of go about collecting the stuff. And, like I, kind of was saying earlier, you don't have to be the best player in the world to play these games competitively. You can just, jump into the rank ladder and just, you might lose a lot of games at the start, but eventually you'll start facing people that are more on your skill level. And, if you're willing to kind of put up with like the initial losses, you'll find people that you can play against and have it fair and interesting. I was playing some games relatively recent, as the new Byzantine civilization has dropped. And it's been a bit of an interesting experience because the Byzantines, they currently have like one of the lowest win rates, especially for lower level players. They're sitting at about like 42% win rates, which is really low. And so, in kind of going into like the ranked modes, like, it's putting that philosophy of you don't always have to win. You can, play a lot of people, and get better over time. It's been putting that to the test. Yeah, no, it's been brutal. I got put in the Bronze League, and then I played one Bronze League game and I still lost. And so, part of it is where, people say you have to have a PhD to play the Byzantines because they're just such such a complicated civilization. But like, you know, it has been an interesting learning process of you trying to make this kind of like trickier civilization that still has like a lot of really fun gameplay. You know, going up against stuff that is, you know, a lot stronger than it. It's a bit of an interesting experience, and not one that I have been placed in a lot before.
This is always the funny part. So I'm Alicia,
and
you
I'm
are
Kiki from the YouTube channel Transparency, sometimes called Transparencyboo.
Yeah.
We're probably best known for our Celeste video, I suppose.
Probably,
that's the one with the most views. Otherwise, I'm not sure we are known per se.
Yeah, big quotation marks on known. Pretty atypical stuff, I think. Interpretations of video games that often defy the norm, perhaps?
Well, we make videos about video games and sometimes other media where we look at them through perspectives that are usually not considered. We always try to find a unique angle that we feel people haven't really considered before. Well, we're two people, so are we gonna do like one each?
It's totally up to you. I'm happy if you wanna do two games. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, that works.
Okay, I guess I'll start then.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're you're a lot more decided than I am.
Yeah, so my game of the year is Void Stranger, a monochrome Sokoban game. Sokoban is a game where you push boxes in a warehouse. However, in this one you are basically exploring layers of hell while having a magic wand which displaces the floor. So you change around the layout of the room in a different way from other Sokoban games. However, that is just sort of the icing on the cake, because this is one of those iceberg games basically that hides a lot more than first may seem. It has secrets, obscure information and things you can find out and figure out that changes the way the game is played. It's a little bit like Fez or Tunic.
What we coined as a brainvania.
Yeah, a game where your knowledge can vastly alter how the game is played. So basically, the game is focused on this pursuit of something in hell, where you do these little puzzles and try to get to the bottom. You go down staircases to different floors, and along the way, your main character, Grey, kind of prods at her past, tangle narrative, which seems pretty sufficient at first, but the more you go, the more this game continues and opens up. You may beat the game, but then you will just find yourself back at the start and you have to go again. And it does go a lot of unexpected places. But one thing I'm not gonna talk about it too much though, but this is one of those games where you kind of need to be aware that yes, it is a puzzle game and it is a bit tricky. However, it is accommodating somewhat. I do think if you're not into Sokoban games, it's probably not gonna be like a perfect match. But it is a game where like knowing that there is more underneath the surface is very helpful, because I think for me, I did one playthrough. I felt kind of content. Contempt. But I was curious. I continued going, and like I played the game for like 30 plus hours. I can't stop playing it. It's so good. And you're not sighing, Alicia. Fuck you.
It's really funny because you've told me several times when you were playing. Like I'm in bed basically. I'm trying to sleep, and then Kiki goes to bed much later, of course. And she's like, I'm at the end now. She has said she is at the end like 4 times.
This game never ends.
And like
I haven't even beaten it yet.
And like the first time she said that, I think she has played it like 15 hours more. It's like I'm just like, what the fuck is up with this game? I haven't seen like a single thing of it.
So that's the funny thing. I think we discovered it from the same source, which is Harry from VideoGamesAreBad recommended it in a Discord server. And there was one person in our Discord server, Transparencyboo, who recommended it. It was Fungal Cactus. Those are the 2 people in the world I've heard talk about this game or mention it. but it was recommended to me specifically as a Sokoban game, and I'm like, oh, I like those. So I got into it, and then I discovered that I'm really into this, and so to sell this game a little bit better perhaps is that without going into what happens like on subsequent playthroughs, like this is a game about discoveries. There are things you can find, techniques you can learn that make the game very different. It opens up and becomes like it trivializes the early challenges in a way where like, oh, this was because you're still in the same playing space basically. You're going through the same game, but you know and have so much more increasingly that like there aren't really any puzzles anymore. You have to find like special extra challenges for that, and you need to figure out little riddles and stuff. But basically, for me to sell this game is that I think this game, Void Stranger, kind of prods at one thing I felt playing the old classic Sokoban games on like the NEC PC from the early 80s, which is this like uneasy feeling about like this is the presentation of this thing. You are like a warehouse worker locked into a little cramped space pushing boxes and trying to do this correctly, or otherwise you're fucked, you're stuck. And that's a Void Stranger feels conscious about this strange situation. It does feel very claustrophobic and like a bit paranoid in a way, where you're kind of fucked, and you're just getting deeper and deeper into it. And like I'm gonna like reveal a set piece that really got to me, and that's towards the end of your first playthrough. The game will just take this format of going through different rooms and solving puzzles and kind of prod at, you've been doing this for a while and nothing is happening. Like you're just stuck here. So it starts by playing a song, and it becomes like a synchronized, choreographed song number about this despair of just going forever through these increasingly meaningless and pointless rooms, doing this menial task forever. And it's like, I thought it was really striking. The game basically falls apart on itself, and I kind of felt that after that whole scene, it made me think about just Sokoban in a new way. There's like a grim undertone of it, where not just that you're a overworked warehouse employee just tasked with this bullshit task, but also that you are a prisoner, you know? You are a little guy stuck in a box maze. Goes off the deep end to the point where like at the end it doesn't feel like a Sokoban game anymore. It feels like it takes that as a game engine to do just something else completely. I think be ready that this game does hide more than more than you will
more than
be yeah, but more than you wait. This game hides more than it first lets on, way more. And if you just wanna see how this keeps evolving and reiterating, it's gonna be a very different game from start to finish. So even if you don't like it now, you might find this to be your gate into this Sokoban play mechanic thing. And I think this could be a good tutorial for that for a lot of people to kind of get into those games, because sometimes when you only have a puzzle element and nothing else, that can be boring. But in this case, it's kind of spruces it up a bit. So you might even think of this as like your gateway into Sokoban. So even if you don't like those games, maybe this would change that.
I wish that I had one of these Void Stranger experiences this year. People have talked so much about, oh, this year, such a great year for video games. And I'm like, I think people want something so different for, like, I play a lot of video games that are just, you know, fun and just a good experience, you know. Like, I liked Pikmin 4. I liked Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But I don't know if I, at this point in my life, you know, diminishing returns, you're 30 years old, it's like, it's hard to just say like, oh, the new 2D Mario game is the game of the year, or for that matter, like Pikmin 4, it's like, oh, it's Pikmin 2 again. Like, I mean, you know, they're good, they're fun, but I don't know, like, I'm all at the point where I feel like if there isn't a game that really, like, speaks to me, like, deeply on a fundamental level, then I don't know if I necessarily have to have a game of the year. that's part of the problem. Like, I haven't played that many indie games this year, and it doesn't seem like there are like that many that I would be like, wow, this is the one, you know. It feels like a pretty solid year, but not like one that has the game of the year, like the
You have played a bunch of
one.
games.
I
like,
have
you've
played-
begun playing them. You started playing Armored Core recently.
Yeah, but
and,
Armored Core I haven't finished, and also
Yeah.
it feels like it's almost like one of those
We
other.
played through all
ones,
of
you know.
Zelda. We played.
Tears
You
of the
started
Kingdom,
playing
yeah, but no.
High Fidelity Rush in the beginning of the year.
Not High Fidelity Rush. It's called Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is good. Yeah, but but you know what I mean. It's like it's the same with I think of what I've played, which isn't a lot. The fucking Armored Core is good. I like, just like in other ones, you're basically like working for the worst people in the world, and that's cool. But I don't know. It's I want something that sticks. I want something that's really just like something that sticks with me hard. Yeah, well, yeah, sure. That's okay. So I did play one game this year.
Very recently.
That was doing very recently. Yeah, that has at least had me been a little bit more engaged.
You've been gushing about this game.
Yeah,
to me about a lot.
and even though I was really angry at it while I was playing sometimes, I played Signalis this year,
Which came out
is a
last
game
year.
from last year. And it's really good. It's a survival horror game. It takes a lot of cues from specifically Resident Evil and Silent Hill. I would say it captures a lot of that essence of those games that you don't really see these days. You know, people take inspiration from them, but they don't really make them like they used to, if we say like that. Like this one has it really is kind of. It has a conviction that I think is really strong, where it's like, oh, it has these PS1 visuals. It has a limited inventory space, like more so than I think a lot of the old classics like Resident Evil. It goes even harder, and I think that's pretty nice. But what really sells Signalis is that it has like it's so. It's like how should I put it? I wouldn't just call it deep, but it's like it has a lot of stuff going on visually and narratively.
From what I've seen, I would call it like symbolically rich.
Yes, symbolically rich, deep on metaphors, and just kind of going all over the place when it comes to like. The visuals and such, and it really keeps its inspirations on its sleeve, and that's just cool to me. Where you can look at something and you're like, oh, but what does this mean? And it's clear that it's not meant to be taken very literally necessarily.
No,
and it's left open. You can take it in so many different directions. Like your interpretation of a game like this, a game about. Dying horrifically in space alone is powerful in a lot of ways, because there is so much stuff there, and it's clear that the developers of Signalis are just like super interested in both like all kinds of different art forms. They make they make references to like very obvious references to Ghost in the Shell, Evangelion. And then they move on to things like the Island of the Dead.
The Isle of Dead by
the Island of the Dead and
19th century painter.
You know all of that stuff, and then they go to the shore of Oblivion, like going to like things about those paintings that you wouldn't really necessarily think that someone would like go in that direction, where it's like, oh, the painters painted these paintings several times, and that's a point, not spelled out or anything. It's just that they superimpose them upon each other, and it's like they keep reflecting something. But it doesn't say anything about it. It doesn't tell you about the paintings or anything. I just think it's cool, you know. when they do that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like Kiki, it's good to have Kiki as well because she's kind of an art expert, of course.
I have gone to university for this, yes.
Yeah, so you're like, you just like the whole the Kiriko thing, for example. Like this was probably one of the first things we talked about when we
pre-transparency video.
Yeah, when we first met. We talked about the Kiriko stuff. It's just interesting, you know. I think at least if anything, it's you can see the difference between games that just want you to interpret them or like they have something to say, and a game that just kind of doesn't.
I am Sputnik34. I do YouTube content talking about video games and whatnot. I kind of started as a retrospective channel and then slowly devolved into game design speak, which is something I have no expertise in, but I like talking about it. And I guess as of about a month ago, people would probably know me as the Lies of P guy. It's been rather amazing, to be honest. I did it. I made the video because one, I wanted to gush about Lies of P, and the second reason was because I wanted to annoy From Software fans, and I did, and I did both of those things, and I did them well. Lies of P is a Souls-like made by a Korean studio, Round 8. It's essentially their first game. They made like an MMO or something like right before it, and then just went straight into this. But it's a really unique twist on From Software, the Souls-like kind of formula, where it's based on Pinocchio, which is the weirdest thing ever, and it's still weird even after beating it 2 times. It's still weird to say that, but they just do enough with the established kind of like formula, I guess, and twist it in all of these little ways that make the combat and like immediate gameplay feel the best that the genre basically has, apart from arguably Bloodborne, in my opinion. The basic formula, I would say, is loosely like a Metroidvania style kind of like world where you have to like unlock very specific things in order to, you know, keep progressing, but it's not exactly the same, but you know, it's kind of like how I base it off of. And it's got a super heavy emphasis on one-on-one combat, stamina management, item management, and really difficult bosses and intricate world design. That's kind of like what I would say kind of qualifies this From Software game. And while Lies of P doesn't really change a whole lot in terms of a lot of that stuff, what it does change, in my opinion, is specifically... Oh, excuse me, I'm gonna burp. Excuse me. Oh my god. What it does change and what matters most, at least in my opinion, is the way that the combat works. And it's sort of like a blend of Bloodborne and Sekiro and a little bit of Dark Souls 1 and 2, I would say, and arguably Demon Souls. It throws in the parry mechanic of Sekiro and puts it in a Dark Souls-like style, because Sekiro is arguably not even a Souls-like. You know, I've heard a bunch of people argue against that fact, and Lies of P comes in and says, "Hey, you like Sekiro? Wish it was a Dark Souls game? Here you go." What it really changes is the emphasis on dodge rolling, iframes, and then it puts an emphasis on parrying. Whereas in like a Dark Souls game, while you do have like the guard option, and I somehow forgot to really like emphasize this at all in my video, but like you can parry in Dark Souls. It's just really clunky and awkward, but you can do it. It's not It's not viable, you know. Lies of P really emphasizes the parry system, and it's almost the same from Sekiro, where it's just really quick. You tap a button and you just kind of like, you know, quick guard. And if you time it right, you get like a really satisfying boink kind of sound effect that lets you know you did it. But just that little tweak, that little kind of shift in emphasis completely changes the game feel to one where, in my opinion, in Dark Souls, you're kind of reactive. In Lies of P, it's very much a proactive style, or at least a very proactive feeling of gameplay. And I just think with the Souls formula, it's just, it's beautiful. I think I saw every trailer leading up to its release, but I think there was There was one like just reveal trailer that was just like a a cutscene that doesn't tell you anything. But the first time that they showed like actual gameplay, I remember looking at it being like, wow, this looks really good. And then they showed off the arm mechanic, the kind of like prosthetic from Sekiro kind of mechanic, because they kind of take that from Sekiro. But like it's like you shoot like a rope out and you bring a guy closer to you. And I remember the second that happened, I was like, this game's gonna be awesome. There's no way this isn't gonna be great. It's really weird because it's there. It has little like references. It has like, it has very specific character names, and it's got like the fox and the cat characters like kind of tweaked in a way that, works in the world that it is. But it's really just kind of like a blanket theme and kind of like visual style that I'm going to be real. It doesn't have to be about Pinocchio, but like just the fact that it loosely is, I think kind of like adds like this really mystical kind of quality to it. It automatically gives it this, this fairy tale feel where it wouldn't if it was just, like creepy city overridden by robots. You know what I mean? Lies of P is like this weird BioShock-esque like alternative future past. Like like loosely, I forget exactly, I want to say they said the Belle Epoque era. I think that's what they said it was. But it's, especially in the Souls world, it's unique visually, but like I think just in gaming in general, it's got this unique feel and look to it. It definitely starts looking like a Bloodborne game, but not even 3 or 4 hours in, it definitely defines its own identity. I definitely feel like the team was like, make it look like Bloodborne so we get people like interested, and then do your own thing. I definitely feel like that was like a mandate. It's going to be so stupid. I'm going to regret saying this, but I do really like the Bloodborne areas at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
It does go to so many interesting places. Like you said, like the mountainside. Then you go to like a literal puppet graveyard, which is just like this giant dump. It looks just like a normal dump, but it's just filled with puppet carcasses. That area is super neat. I don't think that area itself as like a gameplay section is a highlight in any regard, but visually it's fucking great. I don't know if I can swear. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's fucking beautiful, mate. The plot, the way it's presented, I think is really, really impressive. It balances a nearly impossible fine line of telling a narrative and also being cryptic Dark Souls bullshit. It's kind of impressive how well they nailed it, because like there is a clear story happening and it's not that hard to follow, but there's all of these like little things just scattered around everywhere. Like there's a character that you interact with over the phone that essentially is like the Joker and the Riddler combined into one person, and he like gives you riddles, and you like that's part of like that lying system, but it's kind of spun in a way where you're not lying. You have to just kind of like, I guess in that one you have to be truthful in order to progress further, but they somehow managed to nail that kind of like balance. But I will say in a weird way, just I guess the way the human brain works, it's really nice the way that they did it, but it's also potentially a negative in the long run, because I think Dark Souls games are so replayable because you can just kind of like blindly just blast through them, you know what I mean? Like, but like in Lies of P, you do have to hit these story beats, and that can kind of like maybe become tiring after a while. So I feel completely fine in admitting that can be a negative, but I think that at least for a first run or a second run, the story is fun and there's different paths that you can take, and it takes that kind of what would be, I have to sit through this beat again, into a territory where it's not that bad to sit through multiple times. Finish this point, I completely forgot. The like I was saying about that character that you find, the Riddler guy. He has this whole backstory that you kind of have to piece together. Like, this is just like an example, but like he has this whole backstory where you have to like piece together it. He's done some really messed up stuff, and you don't even find that out unless you do very specific things. And even then, there's still a lot to be kind of like interpreted by just the way that he talks and like the backstory that you do get out of him. And like there's like stuff like that, throughout the whole game. I beat Demon's Souls before Dark Souls came out, and then Dark Souls came out, and it was, for some reason, so much more intimidating that I just put it down. I don't know what it was, but I never beat a Souls game again until 2019 when I decided I'm going to beat Dark Souls, and I did. And then I beat all of the games in the course of like a year. Yeah, no, I've been replaying the Souls games like essentially multiple times except for 3 ever since 2019. I think it's really just kind of the focus required to do so, to get through the games, I think is pretty unique. It's kind of a hard thing to quantify. It definitely feels like some sort of magic, and I hate being that guy that's like, oh.
Would you say that was the same case with Lies of P? Like, were you kind of using it almost as a bit of a podcast game you could unwind with as well?
The first run through, no, I was definitely kind of focusing on the game, but on my second playthrough, I definitely did. I had podcasts playing in the background and kind of YouTube videos in the background, and I was just, would come home from work or something, and I would just boot that up and take a deep breath and get killed a bunch. It was wonderful. It's just, it's magic. But
yeah,
there's a certain flair to the Souls games that is really hard for me to like pinpoint. There were multiple times throughout my playthrough my initial playthrough of Lies of P where I either was just laughing because how much I was having fun, or like just, I said on multiple occasions, I cannot believe how good this game is. For the pre-established Souls fans, I would say it is basically a From Software game, just a little bit less emphasis on some of the stuff that you like, but mechanically, presentationally, gameplay feel, it's almost better than FromSoft. I think FromSoft could learn a couple things from Lies of P, to be honest. It's just everything that we always wanted from a Souls-like that no other dev really up until this point came close to. And then for newbies, I would say, I think that Lies of P in a weird way is a really good introduction to the series, because like for a large part of the early part of the game, it is very linear, it is very simple, and it does a shockingly good job at kind of layering its mechanics onto you. And not to say that Dark Souls doesn't, but Dark Souls also likes to be an asshole to new players. Yeah. And while Lies of P does have, gotcha moments, they're a lot fewer than a Souls game is, and it feels kind of like, whereas Miyazaki occasionally will go tee-hee-hee, ha-ha-ha, got you, Lies of P is kind of like, you'll get there eventually, don't worry. I don't know, like, it's such a weird way to put it, but I hope that makes sense.
It's a lot more encouraging than kind of Dark Souls initially feels.
Yes. Thank you. Lies of P is the game we all wanted. Go play it.
Okay, I am Harry, Video Games Are Bad. My channel name is Video Games Are Bad. Most people just call me Harry because Video Games Are Bad is a little bit of a mouthful. I am best known for making silly videos about video games. Sometimes people get upset, but that's okay. Yeah, I'd say it's very, very conversational what I do. Yeah. It's not very, there's no formal structure. It's just basically just me talking for 10, 15 minutes about something that I like or maybe don't like. So I want to talk about the finals. So let's see, in 2010, Battlefield Bad Company 2 came out, and then they kept making Battlefield games, and now the old developers of Battlefield want to do it again, sort of recapture that spirit, specifically I'd say with Bad Company 2. So I would say that Bad Company 2 was kind of a departure for Battlefield in that they needed to basically fit this game on a console. So it's a lot smaller scale to the Battlefield that you may know and love. So it's sort of there's more of an emphasis on teamwork. Destruction was a big part of Battlefield, where you could sort of collapse any building. I think that was like marketing tagline. And that's all brought forward into the finals. So it's multiplayer FPS, objective based. Only squads of only 3, so I think it's like 3 or 4 teams of 3, so very, very, very small compared to sort of what Battlefield are doing now. It's like 128 players.
Yeah.
So in the finals, you have the light, you have the medium, and you have the heavy, and that's it. And they all sort of fill different roles. So you can imagine the light's sort of like a sneaky run around, do lots of damage, but sort of crumples like paper. The heavy is sort of this big, bulky guy that's difficult to kill and puts out like a lot of destruction. He has like a big sledgehammer as one of his weapons. And then the medium is somewhere in between. I think the interesting thing about the medium is that one of the things that he has is a medigun, like from Team Fortress. But then he also has the AK assault rifle. So you can kind of just, you can help and harm people in equal measure. So I unfortunately gravitate most towards light. And there's a big stigma around light in the finals. If you see someone playing light, usually 9 times out of 10, they don't know what they're doing. It's that kind of classic multiplayer, you know, I guess what's the comparison? There's probably certain heroes in like League of Legends or Dota, or like certain guns in Call of Duty, where like you see all of these people that just seemingly don't know what they're doing. It sort of gravitates towards this class, this light class. And I guess the problem with the light is that, yes, you can sort of out with this damage, but he's also squishy. He dies in like a few hits. And this is a game with a very high like time to kill. So it takes a long time to kill all of the characters, except from the light, who basically just, if you're out of position, if you see a light, if you see like a gust of wind, that light's dead. That light's dead in a few seconds. So it often attracts bad players who kind of want to be cool and fast and move around, but then they die in a few seconds. Not me though, obviously. I'm very good at the finals, and I'm very good at light. I'm not one of those bad light players. I'm one of the good ones, you know? It's an objective-based game, right? So it's basically like the interpretation of King of the Hill. Right. So you pick up a box of money, take it to this vault, and then you have to defend the vault. And there's lots of sort of fun interplay that you can do around that. So the light is really good at basically disrupting things. We kind of have a joke in our final stack where, like, if we have a light that's not really doing anything off in the distance, he's running interference. He's always running interference. He's doing something, I'm sure. But you really can, with the light, sort of take bad enemy teams by surprise. Yeah. By just sort of flanking them, like sneaking up on them. There's a active camouflage that you do with the light. So yeah, it's often about sort of being sneaky and sort of hitting the enemy team. Yes, I think it takes sort of like the marketing tagline and kind of weaves it into the actual game. It makes it a part of the game. So an interesting thing about maps is that a lot of the maps are sort of these really confusing labyrinths. That like you can see a cash out station sort of on your heads up display, and you know it's over there, but in between you is like severals and stairs and things like that. And so you're kind of incentivized to just kind of make your own door and just sort of career on through to the objective.
How much time have you put into the final subject?
Oh, shall I have a look?
Yeah, go on.
I'm gonna have a look. So keep in mind, one thing we've not mentioned actually is that the game isn't out yet.
No, I was going to say, so this is a beta, and the fact that you are having
several betas throughout the year that they've run it for.
I guess I'll ask a question then while you're looking for that.
It's not in my library anymore. I believe the last count was about 30 hours.
Oh, nice.
For a game that's not released yet.
Yeah, that's impressive for a game that hasn't been released. Notice much of a change between the betas? Like, did you feel
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So it's kind of like subtle. I think balance, I guess, comes up a lot in games like this, like a competitive game where I remember in the latest beta, everybody sort of complaining about certain weapons being overpowered, like the light's pistols, one in particular. Like a pistol as a primary is kind of an odd thing, but it's a really good gun, and everybody's complaining about it. So it'll be interesting to see the balance decisions that they make when the game finally does come out this year. Balance is an interesting thing. I don't think they've really paid too much attention to the community, which is a good thing, just to be clear. I think that's a good thing. I think they've been using sort of you can definitely tell they've sort of been collecting all of this data and using it in a smart way. So I think one example is the medium has a revive tool, like the defib, pretty much ported straight from Battlefield Bad Company or just any Battlefield game. And it was really good. It was ridiculously good because you basically have a +1 advantage in fights, right? If your teammate dies, you can just immediately get them back up, and that's one more teammate. Yeah. So what did they do to fix this? Well, when you revive now in the sort of later betas, when you revive a teammate, they're only up to 50% health instead. So cool. If you've got a situation where you're being absolutely surrounded, you can no longer get that free +1 just by reviving someone because they're immediately going to go down afterwards if they're in a bad spot. So it's sort of like bouncing decisions like that, which it's not like a direct sort of numbers change or something like that. It's just sort of smart decisions through looking at the data, things like that. I'd say in terms of polish, I think they've clearly brought like a lot of their experience with them. I think the finals is definitely a game that feels fairly cohesive in its direction, right? In terms of like from the game show aesthetics to how the game, how that's linked to how the game plays out, to the objective of the game, things like that. If you're a fan of skins, I don't think that many people are a fan of skins, but there are some really good skins. There's one where I think it's like a sniper rifle that looks like it's made out of carbon. Don't know if you'll be able to find that. It looks really cool. So they've clearly got some, talented people working there that are sort of able to, I don't know how small the team is, but if it is small, then clearly they're able to sort of overcome that just through their experience. I think it is just unfortunate that, the AI voices are used. Part of me wonders that it might be a placeholder.
Maybe,
I'm hoping it is. I don't think it be, but just due to the nature of how much the game has changed throughout all of the betas, entirely new game modes have been added and things like that. So it might be a case of that they just don't know where the game is at and they just sort of keep iterating on things and they have to change the voice lines here and there. I think that the finals, certain games where it's like, this game is really good with friends.
Yeah.
This game is not just good with friends. I think it's essential with friends. I don't think you can play it without friends. And I think they've designed that in a very specific way. It's only teams of 3, so you only need 2 other people compared to, say, like at a League of Legends or Dota Stack where it's like 4 other people. That's a bit more difficult. And also the game is free to play. So there's no sort of awkward conversations with your friends going, oh, should we play this? Or should we play this? It's like, no, we can just try it out. So I would like more maps.
Yep.
So they've done 2 maps, and then what was a bit worrying, they did a 3rd map that was kind of like a mashup of the other 2 maps, and I don't think it was quite as good. My headcanon is that they were kind of testing bigger maps, so the map is a lot bigger than the other 2, and so they kind of just threw it together. At least I'm hoping that's what's happened. But yeah, when the final comes out, I'm hoping even for just like another 2 maps, that probably doesn't sound like a lot in terms of like a competitive FPS, 4 maps. But just because they're so sort of intricate and elaborate and it takes so much time to learn all of them, I think that would be fine. In terms of what I don't want to be fair, I think I trust them in terms of like the balancing decisions and everything. I think what they've done so far is a really good indicator of what the game's going to be like when it comes out. So I don't think I'm too worried about the finals.
And I was going to say, so if somebody wanted to get, so, maybe they were listening to this and, they were interested in the finals, what, like, would you give them, what's a little bit of advice you'd give them to be like, to put them in the mind space?
Find 2 other people to play with.
That's the main one.
Without hesitation. I think if you go in as a solo player, you're going to have a good time, unfortunately. That's probably the biggest caveat that I have for the finals. You need people to play it with.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. My YouTube handle is iamerror. I make lots of videos, and they run the gamut of different topics. Some are on games, some are on like personal experiences. Soon some will be on film. I don't think I actually have any long videos on film, but I'm going to be getting to it. So first things I want to say is that you told me in September that you were like, that you asked me like, hey, do you want to take part of this thing? And I knew I would have a couple months before you actually interviewed. And I got really worried because I was like, I haven't played anything this year, which it wasn't even true. At the time of you asking me, I realized I had played like 9 or 10 games of that year of 2023. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have any game that I was like, this is my game of the year. And that stressed me out. So I just started buying lots of games and in my free time, just playing them, just like looking and hoping to find that one spectacular game of the year. I actually just tallied it before we got together to talk. I bought or downloaded, because I used some on the Xbox Game Pass, 10 games over 2 months, just to be like, okay, I played enough to actually have an opinion on this. This is gonna be the shock of the game of the year. Nothing wowed me, actually. Nothing took the crown. I really liked, though, everything I played. There wasn't a bad game of the bunch. There just wasn't a game that also was like, this is definitively rises above. And so I wanted to note here, before we get into my actual 2023 games of the year, 2 things. One, I think it's worth noting that, to me, when I think of the game of the year, I think of like the best game I played for the first time this year. Like last time we did this, I said Ultra Kill, which technically had come out the year prior, but I had played it that year, and so that was my game of the year, which was also easier because that's also like a live service game, a little bit, like it has expansion, so a new expansion had come out that year, so it's kind of easy to say it came out in 2021 when we had that discussion. And if that was the case, my game of the year would be Eco. Eco really floored me. I never actually played through it all the way, and I did this year, and it really made me feel a lot of things. I really liked it. And then my secondary thing would be, if I were judging more on like the perspective of like, this is the game from this year that's important, and I think will stand the test of time, and kind of really is the game that means a lot for this year, I'd have to go with the Jeff Keighley pick, which was Baldur's Gate 3. I think that game is such an accomplishment. Like, if we're just looking at it from that perspective of like, wow, this is a game, I think Baldur's Gate 3 kind of takes the cake for me. I don't think there's really much, there's no other game kind of like it to a degree, and it's a really special experience. But I don't like CRPGs. So like, I played like 2 hours of it, and I played through all of Divinity 2 with friends. And it's not that different from Divinity 2. I think it's just a bunch of people are experiencing Larian Studios' style for the first time.
Yep.
And so to me, it's like, oh, this is like a way better version of Divinity 2, a game I'm mostly liked because I played it with friends, not because I like this kind of game. So it can't be my game of the year because it didn't connect with me at all, really, on that level. I think 2023 to me was a year of granular improvement. And by that, what I mean is that I think a lot of the games that people are like, this game was like new, or this game was great. Like, because like a lot of people are saying this is like the greatest year ever for games, which I think is kind of a strange thing to say in the middle of the year. I think you need some hindsight to really be able to tell that. But a lot of people have really praised this year. But to me, a lot of the games have been kind of retreads, better experiences, but retreads of old experiences I've had. I already talked about Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity 2, but also there's like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Pikmin 4 and the other Pikmin games to me weren't that different. Super Mario Wonder, which I really like, and just the rest of the new Super Mario Bros. Canon. Like, to me, Wonder wasn't that big of a step. There was a bunch of really good remakes too, right? Like Resident Evil 4 remake, Dead Space remake. I'm sure those ones I actually didn't specifically play. I'm sure they're great, but it's hard for me to imagine a remake taking the mantle of best game of the year for me, just by nature of it just being mostly an experience I've had to some degree. Maybe a much elevated experience, but still that same experience. To me, that was like what felt like nothing could crest above the water for this particular year, was that so much of the games just didn't give me something really fresh, something new. And that's what I look for when it comes to like a game of the year, is something that will, something that gives me something new. And I think Ultra Kill, which did a couple of years ago, really did. I think another game from 2020, my game of the year would probably be Half-Life Alyx, another game which just gave me something I had never had before. And to me, those games stick with me for that reason. And so that's kind of my perspective on it a little bit, and why this year I really struggled to connect with the bulk of games that came out. Not that I didn't like them, but just none of them were like, this is my game. So I've got 5 2023 games of the year that I'm gonna lump into a category. So I'll read them off to you, and then I'll tell you what that category is.
Sure.
So the 5 games are Void Stranger, Cocoon, Humanity, Chance of Sonar, and Viewfinder. And if you can't tell, those are all puzzle games. And I think this was, to me, the year of kind of indie puzzler. I think there's a lot of good indie puzzle games. And then what's interesting is all of these are way different games. Like, these are not just 5 iterations on Portal-esque puzzles or something like that. Maybe Viewfinder's a little Portal-y, or maybe Chance of Sonar is a little bit like Heaven's Vault, right?
Yes.
Like there's like similarities to other ones. So again, like I was saying about 2023, incremental improvements, you can see that here. These are games still in well-trod kind of genres, but I felt like what they did really was more elevated than what I experienced from, like, I don't know, like I didn't play it, but like Marvel Spider-Man 2 was the example that came to mind. And so, I want to talk about puzzle games and the 5 wonderful puzzle games that I played this year that I was like, these are the spectacular experiences that are at least closest to what I was looking for. Even though none individually are that impressive to me, but in collective, I was like, when I look back on my year, it's puzzle games that I'm like, that's what I remember playing this year. That's what really stood out to me, was there's a lot of memorable, cute little puzzle games from indie developers. Void Stranger is a Sokoban-esque, meaning like you push boxes around, puzzle game about kind of almost like descending into almost like a hellish black and white thing. It's kind of weirdly artsy, kind of anime-y in terms of its plot, and but it's about descending, and it's a game where you're supposed to keep repeating it. I actually only played through it once. I loved it. I was like, I'm not going to keep repeating this to find the additional little plot snippets. Second one, Cocoon, is this game where you play this kind of like insect, and the main mechanic is that you have these orbs you carry around, and you can go inside the orbs, and you can get another orb, and you put that orb inside of an orb, and then it gets all weird, and it's really head trippy, kind of worlds inside of worlds inside of worlds. Humanity is kind of like a Lemmings-esque game. I actually only started playing this last week because it was on Jacob Geller's Games of the Year list, and I hadn't heard of it, and I really loved it. But Lemmings-esque in that you control like these humans as they're walking, and you're a dog, and you just have to get them to a goal. And it's, of course, the ways you have to get them to that goal and direct them keep evolving as you play. But the beauty of the game is really just that you see like this mass crowd of people, and you're just trying to get them where they need to be. It's very visually appealing as a game. Chance of Sonar is this game where you climb this giant kind of tower or society, and each layer of the society, of this kind of like caste society, has a different language. And really the gameplay of the game is trying to uncover what each of the words in each of these languages mean, so that you can like progress through a variety of challenges. Finally, Viewfinder, which viewers of your channel will probably be most familiar of these 5, is a game where you've got this little like Polaroid camera, and when you take a picture of it, you can then play, or you obtain a picture in some way, you can place those pictures into the world, thus modifying that world so that you can, and then using that to solve puzzles. So that's my quick explanation of these 5 games. Over Thanksgiving, American holiday Thanksgiving break, I knew I would have time while staying with relatives to play a game, and so I got Viewfinder and we played it on my relatives' TV, and they found it really interesting. These are people who don't really play games, but they really liked it. They were like really fascinated. On the same day I started playing Viewfinder, actually, I also shared Portal with one of my nieces, who's like 10.
Oh,
and
lovely.
I'm pretty sure over Christmas break we're going to play through Viewfinder next, because I think she'll really like it. I really try to play new games with like low expectations. I don't watch even game trailers. Almost every game I play is because I got recommended it in one way, and I try not to, I won't even go read the Wikipedia page. And I find that games are more enjoyable, or movies or whatever, are a lot more enjoyable when you're just like, I'm just diving into this. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna experience, but I think that sometimes having expectations, having an idea of a game in your head as you go into playing a game can actually just, to me at least, it makes games usually worse.
Oh, interesting.
Because then I'm comparing the game against the game that's in my head, and the game that's in my head is probably almost always going to be better, unless I'm like, because I'm an optimist, right? It's like in my head, every game should be amazing, and every game isn't. Every game has its issues and its problems. So I find that the less I know, the better. Ignorance is bliss. But all 5 of these games, I did enjoy the more I played them. Especially like Void Stranger, which is maybe my favorite of the bunch. I think I played like a little bit of it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of just Sokoban, and I've done a lot of Sokoban.
Yeah.
And then it kept opening up, and I was like, ooh, I haven't done this before. Ooh, like, you know, that was my experience. Like, it's just a consistently higher pitched oohs, and until suddenly I finished it up, and I really liked it. But that was the case for all of these games, where my smile grew bigger from beginning to end, and that's what I want from a good game. I guess the last thing I'll just note, and this kind of will segue maybe into our broader games of industry or whatever discussion. This was such a big year for games in terms of publicity, and none of these games even scratched the surface of like mainstream discourse. I mean, I know some of these were like in the Game Awards or whatever, but like because there were so many like big games from big studios, you know, like even Baldur's Gate 3, which is kind of almost more indie than like, I don't know, Tears of the Kingdom, is still a huge game, like, right? Like it is like massive. These are all little bite-sized meals. They're little experiences, not something you devote your entire life to. These are all like 5-hour games or less, right? And I think that there's something to be said for both sides of that. The indie, more unwell known, seek that out, and 2, seek out games that you can just play and be done with in an afternoon or in a couple days, and then you get to move on to the next one. All of these games, right? It's not like I spend massive amounts of time. Even all combined, I probably spent less hours on these 5 than most people spent on Baldur's Gate, right? Try short experiences. That would be like my last like champion of these. Is like short games are good actually. They're like being able to be done with something is actually, and then have it be in your mind as a complete thing. I'm thinking Cocoon a little bit now, the orbs, right? It's like you've got the orb there, it's in your hand, now you can explore it, it's in you. And I think that there's something valuable about that that's worth championing. They are all quite different. I think like I would want to know more what somebody likes, or I like cast a specific one of them off to them.
Sure.
But I think that like I think I would appeal to your aspirational self. All right. So like there, you know, this is kind of a metaphor that's been I've heard repeated many times. But you know, there's the you who wants a Marvel movie or whatever. You know what I mean? You want to watch Iron Man 2 for the 100th time. All right, I think there's some little creature within all of us who wants that, right? That easy, comfortable entertainment. And maybe for me, I think that actually puzzle games kind of fit that niche a little bit, but I think for most people, they're not. But there's also the you who wants to experience something new, right? Who wants to go out and see a movie in the theater that's going to like challenge you to some degree, right? Make you think, make you be present in the moment more. That can be a little bit more on the front end. That can be a little bit more. You have to invest. There's a little bit of an investment in playing a game like Void Stranger or Chance of Sonar, but I think you'll find that investment pays off, and that would be my recommendation. Invest a little bit. You know, let yourself be a little uncomfortable at the start of any of these games, because I think that by the time you're an hour, 2 hours in, you won't be able to put them down.
Did you feel like it was a good year for games?
It was stacked. I mean, I can't even keep up. I'm trying to fit in as many games as I missed out on in like the next couple weeks before I do like my own end of year video. And oh my God, there's so many. I have to just forget about some of them because it's just too much. There's too much to play.
Yeah, 2023 has been the goatee. I mean, for that reason quite alone. I feel almost sad that I haven't been able to get around to a whole lot of games this year, but the ones that I have played, I kind of summed this up in a tweet a while ago, but I don't know if I still stand by it, but I feel it in my heart that 2022 was just a year full of indie bangers, and 2023 was a year of, I mean, both really, but the AAA games really kind of showed up and were like, what's up guys, we're here to party. And we all fucking did a line and drank beer with them.
I still haven't played like Hi-Fi Rush, Armored Core. That's not even considering like the indie space. Oh my God. There's like a good 30 titles, I swear, that are on my list, but it's just, there's no time. So I'm hoping 2024, as weird as this is to maybe say, I'm hoping it's a bit quieter, so I have time to catch up.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've sort of learned from this year at least, is that the game that, you know, my favorite game of any given year is never going to be the game that I anticipate. But I thought it was going to be a slam dunk this year with Tears of the Kingdom, and it just didn't quite grip me in the way that I thought it was going to. Instead, it's just this other game that's, you know, I didn't even know existed at the start of the year. And I think it's going to be the same for next year as well.
Yeah, it was kind of sad in a sense missing out on certain games like around release, because I kind of like to do that and like see everyone else's reactions. But yeah, it was just impossible. It was just too much to play. And the thing is, it wasn't all like, here were the couple good ones and here were the bad ones, right? They were all mostly very, very highly reviewed. So it was just crazy. I think 2023 has definitely been one of the best years in terms of like the games that have come out.
What's been an interesting thing about 2023 from like sort of other people is, especially in the AAA space, it's been a very iterative year, as in like the biggest games that people are talking about are very much sequels or remakes, or they're like kind of reworkings of previously existing ideas.
Yeah, I think for those of you who like all of these games that are the games for before with the 2 on the end, I think it was a great year for games.
Remakes, I'm not really too negative, I guess, when it comes to remakes in comparison to other people, but it's something like the Dead Space remake just felt like it was just the same pretty much, minus a few changes. But something like the RE4 remake definitely felt a lot more fleshed out and also still tried to have at least some of its own identity, regardless of the fact that it is a remake of something that already exists. So yeah, I mean, it really depends on the title, but I don't know. I do prefer overall just brand new experiences. With remakes, I mean, what was it? There's like a Last of Us 2 remake or something coming out
Next year,
like, why?
Yeah, they've remastered it.
Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Just, I understand porting, right, to another console. But do you need to call it like a remaster or a remake or anything? Just have it on the new console. I mean, it's so new as a game.
You know, the industry sucks, you know, and we should criticize it and all that. But the unfortunate thing is, and you know, I don't have much to add to that. You know, other people have said it many times, but you know, the thing for me is like, you could certainly complain about like the amount of remakes or something, but what I've realized is, I don't know. I don't know if I have any fundamental problem with remakes like some people do. Like, you know, certainly in terms of game preservation, and you know, I do value originality. All that stuff is, you know, good. But like Resi 4, like that's like also one of my favorite games, maybe ever, honestly. It was just such a incredible year. I didn't vibe super hard with the Dead Space remake. I think that kind of horror is just not for me, but just like, I don't know, like there's been some really interesting like remakes and sequels this year, and I feel like I should have a problem with it, but I don't. It kind of rocked.
The more kind of like big budget games, I kind of feel like I want them to be more familiar, and I'm willing to take a lot more chances on indie games. And I don't know if that's just because of the prices of indie games, generally speaking, in comparison to bigger budgeted games. Like if I'm paying $60 or $70, I feel like I kind of want to know what I'm getting into. Whereas an indie game being like $5 to $20, it's like, I have no idea what this is. Sure. You know what I mean?
I think I'm just at a stage in my life where the kinds of media that don't stretch me in any way, that are just comfort, are an instant just no for me. Cause I feel it's more rewarding to play these 5 puzzle games than it is to spend 20 hours playing Counter-Strike.
I don't think that many these sort of sequel-y games are actually going to enter my top 10 this year. I think it's sort of going to be the games like the Finals or like Shadows of Doubt or Void Stranger, where it's these games that, do come out of nowhere and surprise me by doing whatever clever thing it is that they do.
For the past I would say for the past like 5, 6, 7 years, that's usually been the case for me, is that the indie games are doing stuff that I find more novel. Because I don't replay games a lot, and I don't like playing the same game I've already played very much. And so a lot of times, like if I'm playing a game and it's just like, oh yeah, this is similar to something I've already played, it's just not gonna stick with, because like it'll default and kind of just be rolled into the dough of my previous experience, right? Yeah, indie games generally stand out more to me than what the big companies are doing right now. And I think that this was just a year in particular where nothing I got from the quote unquote big companies was novel to me, was like really new and fresh. And I want to note a big caveat there.
Sure.
I have not played Alan Wake 2. That game, everyone seems to think is really, really good. I think I might love it when I play it, but I ain't played it, so I can't comment on its quality or how good it is.
And I think Sony in particular has been really disappointing for me. Getting a PS5 have been a big waste, I feel.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, the PS4 had a lot of different games, and the PS3 as well. But like the PS5 is just like, they have absolutely nothing going on. They're like, nah,
one
man.
game a year,
like,
maybe.
Yeah, game a year. And at the same time, people like complain about the output of Nintendo, which is like, dude,
Nintendo like one game a month or something.
Yeah, like Nintendo just fucking shotgun pumps these motherfuckers out, and then you can sit there and be like, yeah, Spider-Man 2, and it's like, what do you mean? Like, I'd rather see a lot of different games be released by Sony rather than just Spider-Man.
I think that's the thing with Nintendo in general. They just kind of understand the virtue of having lower budget games to spruce up their bigger stuff that like just kind of enriches the library of a platform.
Yeah, and that's the part of the thing with Nintendo as well. Like, they just leverage their IP so much better than all of these other guys. Like, Sony has basically killed all of their back catalog, and the fact that they don't even own a lot of the ones that were associated with them
back in the day.
Yeah, like Spyro and Crash that are now Microsoft characters.
But they have the developers at least.
Yeah, sure, they have the developers, but they're not really.
They're not doing much.
You know what I
anymore,
mean? And then they're starting to move on to be like, oh, we're gonna we're gonna do like 12 fucking live service games. And it's like, oh, it didn't even work. Even before they were released, they cut half of them. And it's like, what the? Like, you guys are so silly in the head, because like Nintendo at the same time, they have like leveraged their IP. There's a reason why they can sell their games for full price throughout an entire console cycle. And Sony and Microsoft can't even come close.
I feel bad for Starfield. I do genuinely think it's a good game. It's a good game, but if it needed the time, it needed the time in the oven. Otherwise, it would have been a fucking shit show, and everybody would have hated it. But at the same time, it came out in 2023, and I think it's just the Bethesda games standing alongside all of these other games. It almost had no chance. I do genuinely think it's a fun game. I liked it. It's a solid 7.5 out of 10.
I think that, so we kind of like, there was this big shift, I would say, around 2010 to 2015. That's like a pretty big 5-year period. But you saw that, I think you felt it too, because you were alive at the time, that there was a big shift in the games industry from what we might call, like from 2005 to 2010, there was this push for the cinematic experience, which meant shorter, kind of like Uncharted, even like Gears of War is kind of like this, where it was just like, yes, these games might be replayable and they might have multiplayer, et cetera, but they were trying to like be something punchy that was memorable in a certain kind of compact, I like the word efficient here, like very efficiently entertaining. And then there was but from 2010 to 2015, we pushed it, there was a big pull in the opposite direction. Whether it was with games as service, like Minecraft, or like these games you can just never finish playing, Skyrim's like that, but also the multiplayer, right, like push of like the StarCrafts, Counter-Strikes, League of Legends, Dota 2s of the world. And so to me, we've been in that
zone or whatever.
Holocene, whatever we want to call it, for quite some time. I think that we've seen a lot of high profile either failures or just not living up to the success of that, or that they were destined for in recent years. Redfall is an example of this. But in general, we've seen like those kinds of games starting to struggle. And I think that makes sense, because once you picked up Valorant or whatever, that becomes the game, right? And it becomes harder and harder to crowd into that field as time passes on. Whereas I think that these shorter experiences, they do have a value in being a thing that you can pick up, be done with, and put down, because then the next thing that comes along is the next one you just pick up, play through, put down, right? And I think that there is, I think, a shift in Game Pass's. Game Pass, I think, it has like a good sense of this, because it's probably a lot cheaper to put Cocoon or Sea of Stars on your little
platform
service than like the developing Starfield or Forza, right? And so it makes sense that they populate their service with lots of these little things. But I think that they're well served for this service, because like, for instance, Cocoon, I might not have purchased it. I probably would have. Venma and Solar Ash. These are two games I played this year. I played through pretty much all of Venma. I played through like an hour or two of Solar Ash. And these are games I would never buy. Like, this is just the truth. I didn't like them, but I would not have bought them on Steam. But I got to have a richer year of experiences because of that.
I think it's just, it's kind of hard to pinpoint, but it really does just feel like the AAA games for quite a little while there were definitely good ones, they either fell into just being mediocre or like live service. And while there definitely were a bunch of live service games still coming around this year and in the future, unfortunately, it just kind of, at least from the way that I kind of like play games and stuff, it felt just like a lot of AAA games came in saying like, we made a quality product and it's intended to be just a game that you can play and enjoy, and it's good.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to think about, isn't it? Because I think developers have kind of realized that in order to make a multiplayer game, you need people to play your multiplayer game, right?
Yes.
And we are kind of slowly but surely seeing the live service model fall apart. People have looked at Fortnite and have gone, we can do that, that's fine, we can do a battle pass. And then all of a sudden you've got 10 people playing, which is not enough to fill a server. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see the fate of the finals when it does come out and when it is sort of released into the big wide world. Yeah, I think multiplayer games are definitely in a tough spot right now. I did look at the Keighley nominations for that, and I think, what was it? It was like Baldur's Gate 3 and a few other things. It didn't really look like a super solid offering, although I guess Lethal Company has come and shaken things up. But I wonder if that is going to be the direction of certain multiplayer games going forward when they just kind of, they're just out. They just sort of release. Again, going back to Lethal Company, it's just like it's there and you can play it, and they might, is it early access, I think? So they might make changes to it, but I mean, it's still capturing a lot of people right now with sort of how unique it is.
When people in the games world say live service, I think what I think of is a game that is unfinished and put out to just milk money out of people. Yeah, live service games just feel like it reeks of corporatism, and it doesn't feel good. It makes me kind of like cringe every time I look at AAA live service games. 2025 will be the last year that we'll see a push for them, just because so many are in development right now and games take a while. So I think 2025 will be the last year, the last dying breath of AAA live services.
I don't know. I'm really curious what is going to happen with the industry. It just feels like it's been in a weird spot for a few years, and it's continuing to just be in an odd state with live service games and, just AAA being so expensive and all that.
I think that GTA 6 will be, it feels like such a monumental thing right now. I think I might be on the hype train for it. I think that, ideally, that it would be just GTA 5 2 in that sense, where it's because the trailer dropped and it's clearly a story that they're telling with the characters and everything. I feel like Rockstar has enough money and has enough goodwill with gamers that they wouldn't compromise on what makes a GTA game good. And I think that I have no proof of this, but I do genuinely think that it will be a fully fleshed out game, single player game, and then, I don't know, 5-6 months, maybe a year down the line, GTA 6 Online will kick off, and it will just be GTA 5 again for another 10 years or something.
How much money does GTA 6 have to make to justify its cost? And I worry that what these game design companies or game development companies put their stock into as being it's just not very smart. It's not very good. It's not very good for games. It's not very good for the workers. It's trying to make to me, GTA 6 is the man hours, the woman hours that are required to make that game, right? Are obviously tremendous. But a lot of it is on little things that I think aren't that, to me, reflective of what people really want from experience, right?
The communal aspect of a big release will always still be an event that you'll remember. You know what I mean? It's just in a different. It's being inputted or outputted in a new light, in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was. It's disappointing that there was such a contrast.
To me, the gaming news of the year is just all of the industry, the crunch, the layoffs. There's, I guess crunch is kind of old news. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that it's not still happening.
No, sure.
But that's something that we've been talking about for a while. But all the layoffs and everything, I think that the gaming industry is a little bubbly right now, in the sense of I think that it's the same thing with any industry. There's always a limit on the market share that's possible, or whatever you want to call it. And I think that companies have been over-investing in games, which is a natural, economic thing when you're in a capitalist system, because they don't know where that limit is. But I think we've maybe surpassed it, and the layoffs this year are suggesting that games are maybe as wide or as big of an appeal, or as the executives at least thought.
Yeah, it's. I think I read this morning. I want to say 8,000. I might be wrong in that, but 8,000 sort of tracked people laid off this year in the games industry, which is terrible. It's really bad.
If I had to pick one, Free Radical closing is just a slap in the face.
Yeah,
it's such a bummer.
Yeah, there was one that stuck out to me. It was I don't know if you've played Season, A Letter to the Future. It came out near the start of the year, and I love that game. I thought it was so cool, and then it unfortunately didn't get as much attention as I think it deserved, but inevitably the company were oh, it didn't perform well, and then they fired a lot of the people who worked on the game, which I think is so shit, because I think the issue was just marketing.
Kind of thing's been happening in esports as well this year.
Really?
It's like there was this studio called Beyond the Summit, which sort of like prized themselves on like not taking VC money, sort of running these very cozy events for like Dota and Smash Bros. And all of these other different games. I think last year they had this giant kind of studio in Los Angeles, and this year they've closed down.
Shit. And it was literally because they just
didn't have the money. And same thing basically everywhere. I think lots of these sort of esports teams are dying out. The International this year did not have its highest prize pool in history. I think it was something like a few million, which compared to like the 50 million that it was the year before. Things like that. I think what we're seeing in the games industry with its funding is definitely like, if you look to esports, you definitely might start to worry a bit.
The games industry is essentially, I mean, the movie industry seems to be kind of finally moving away from this, but the games industry is at this moment right now, at least for AAA stuff, where movies were, I don't know, like a decade ago, where every movie that came out needed to make $1 billion. Otherwise, it was just a flop. And games seem to be, like, again, AAA games seem to be at that, or getting to that space where, like, unless you fucking break every record preceding it, like, it's just a failure. And I really hope that the games industry moves past that sooner than later, because, we're gonna get more embracers just if we don't get away from it.
I feel like, in general, since, maybe like the RE2 remake, there has been this like huge resurgence of horror, especially in AAA. I mean, it's always been there in indie, but AAA especially. I mean, we have the Silent Hill 2 remake, as well as like Silent Hill, what's it called? Townfall and F as well. And then we also have Alone in the Dark remake too coming out. So I mean, it's huge. It's just nice to see money being put into horror again, as opposed to indie developers just carrying the genre. That being said, I still think that the indie space will always have something different to offer. So regardless of whether or not AAA are pushing out good products, I think it's always worth keeping an eye on what smaller developers are doing too.
Honestly, you know, I don't know, it might be my personal favorite year for games. I don't know. It's weird to say, like, because, you know, Game Pass was still kind of awesome this year. Had like, I mean, Cocoon, Venba, need to beat Venba, but it's like 2 hours long. But Jusant was incredible. Oh my god, just remember Jusant.
The movie industry, I think, really is shifting due to a huge influence, and I don't know the actual influence, but I feel in my heart of hearts it's bigger than I'm even inferring. But the influence of A24 as a studio has drastically shifted the modern view of movies, the contemporary view of movies. And I was thinking while you were talking, it's like the games industry, I think, just needs an A24, and I don't know that Xbox Game Pass could potentially be just another Xbox Live Arcade. Maybe that's the game's A24 to some extent, where it just puts these like smaller things out for everybody for free essentially, and it just gets it gets more eyes on smaller games and more unique gameplay mechanics. You know, it shifts the communal view or the paradigm or whatever fancy word you want me to say. Yeah, and if I'm wrong, Game Pass is what shifts it. I don't think I'm wrong in the sense that I think that once this games industry gets its own A24, then we'll see a pretty drastic shift in the next, 5 years after that.
Yeah, so I guess, like, thanks to the advancement of technology, it is hard to say that, like, any year in game can, like, truly be, like, a terrible year, because, like, even if no good new games came out this year, there's such a wealth of older games to experience. And, with emulation, it is easier than it has ever been to experience them. Not that I think emulation should be the primary, like, backbone of game preservation. I actually think that's a bit of a flawed expectation. If you do know how to use emulation and have the technological proficiency, you can find a lot of interesting stuff to play. And, you know, for me, like like you said, I have not played many of AAA games that have come out this year. And, you know, part of it is, you know, like I don't always have the hardware for it, like a PlayStation 5 or like a really good computer. But then, like, in addition to that, also, you know, it's just like, you know, games, you know, are $60 in the AAA space and increasingly expensive. You know, are we supposed to just accept that, like, just people who might be interested in game history have to jump through all of these things, have a bunch of technical know-how, and, you know, set all of this up just so they can play Ape Escape? Like, is that reasonable, right? Like, you know, and I don't think it is. And so, you know, this is part of why I do think, like, some kind of more official game preservation pushes are important and necessary. There's no simple answer to the question of, like, how I find old games, because, you know, like it's honestly a very varied experience where, like, you know, part of it comes from just, like, having, you know, like following a lot of different people with a lot of different tastes, who specifically kind of go out of their way to find stuff. You know, people like Thor High Heels or Mandalore or Loot. And, like, you know, these are people who are also looking for other old weird stuff. And, you know, just like kind of having just broad nets, it is important. And also, you know, extending those nets outside of YouTube. You know, like I've looked through like Bennett Foddy's blog to find some like really interesting stuff. That's actually how I found ZK Maps originally. One thing that I am relatively hopeful for, so you had mentioned like the study from the Video Game History Foundation that they were involved with. And part of the reason why they did that study was because they, you know, kept, you know, like every couple of years they have to negotiate, you know, they being like a collection of archivists and librarians, have to negotiate with the, you know, collective video game industry, you know, your Nintendo's, EA, Activision, you know, all the big boys. And they essentially want the ability to lend games from their collection in like digital forms as like ROMs or something like that to like other academics or researchers. But they've always been shot down on that front. But now having, you know, this study come out kind of gives them very concrete proof of like, all right, here are the numbers of games. You know, here is everything that is not available. As a researcher, you know, not having access to 87% of, you know, the medium is not good. And so hopefully having access to that study will give them more access to, it will give them more leverage in those negotiations. Which could potentially result in some very interesting preservation fronts being advanced, you know, with regards to like giving researchers the ability to access games without having to illegally pirate.
I'm looking forward to that new Alone in the Dark game. I love survival horror, and part of me is upset that it didn't get released this year because that would have been just another banger. But, you know, I'd rather have a game be delayed and be great than be rushed and not good. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. I know as soon as we stop recording, I'm going to think of a better game. I mean, the Lies of P DLC will probably come out next year. Elden Ring DLC will probably come out next year.
You know what? I'm gonna be contrarian. I'm gonna say Silent Hill 2 remake.
Okay. Well, why?
So here's my theory. This may not age well, but Bloober Team, I'm not a fan of Bloober Team. That being said, I think they do visuals quite well. And if they're gonna be copying Resident Evil 2 remake for like the gameplay, then boom, formula done already, right? And then if the story's already done, all they have to do is just type it out, right? They just gotta put that in and not change anything. And then I think, you know what? I think they have a chance at making a decent game. I think also having Masahiro Ito and I think Akira Yamaoka's on it too. Having them two attached to it definitely gave me a lot more hope. So yeah, I think just having it modernized, I suppose, even though it didn't really need that, it's just, I kind of like the idea of having a different interpretation of it. Whether or not it's good or not, it's always interesting to see that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't replace the original, right? So long as that's sort of available for people to play, which thank God for emulation, but yeah, then, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have something new put out, so I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I am a bit more hopeful about it than other people, definitely than most of the fan base, which is understandable. I understand where they're coming from because the Silent Hill series has been downhill for a while. And Ascension is not what people want. It's not what anyone wants, I think. So I'm just hoping that Silent Hill 2 Remake and Townfall and F are a lot better. And Townfall especially, I think is going to turn out pretty good because No Code have been putting out bangers since day one. So I'm very hopeful for that.
It's interesting because like going into next year, like I feel like it's kind of an unknown in a lot of ways. I'm looking forward to the console that everyone thinks Nintendo's gonna release, but you know, it hasn't been confirmed. I feel like that's one of the reasons like next year is kind of an unknown is because Nintendo's probably gonna drop like my new favorite game of all time being like a new Mario game. That's what I'm really hoping for. And I don't think it's like a unreasonable thing to guess. It certainly seems likely.
I don't even know, is Nintendo gonna release a game next year? I can't think of a game. Maybe a new 3D Mario, that'd be cool.
Oh boy, I have a good one.
Oh, good.
I am looking forward to see all of the Nintendo speculation YouTube channels.
Oh, hell yeah.
Break in the fact that there is no Switch 2 next year.
Oh, you reckon?
I am so if there is something that would make my entire being fulfilled.
Why do you take pleasure in people's pain?
No, it would make me so happy. It would make me the happiest person in the universe to just see them scramble for the fact that there is no Switch 2 next year. I love
the idea of like they keep doing Nintendo Directs and like the more that they go on, the more unhinged the Nintendo Supers get.
Yeah.
To the extent that they do a Direct in September and they say that's the last one of this year. There's no news. And like there's a video from Arlo where he's doing a dash, like he's doing a video from his car. Like he's got this, and he's just like he's been into like he lost in divorce court. He's just like screaming and smashing the dashboard.
I can't believe this.
They
Nintendo.
let me down. They fucking let me down.
This was supposed to be the summer of Switch 2.
Nintendo, this was supposed to be the final year of the Switch.
On the subject of more like kind of like niche games, maybe like coming back, you know, Stormgate is coming out, and there's actually kind of a lot of eyes on which if you aren't familiar, it's a RTS being developed by a lot of former StarCraft developers. You know, it just launched a Kickstarter actually relatively recently, and so you know there's a lot of high hopes that maybe like Stormgate will bring a lot of new people into the RTS genre.
Vampire the Masquerade does look interesting. I'm very curious to see if that turns out any good. I don't know, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of tent poles for next year yet. And even then, like, I do always expect some of my favorite games for them to be like indies I'd never heard of, like, you know, a Lethal Company that comes out of nowhere.
I guess there's a lot of indies that I have on my wish list right now that aren't out yet, but they'll come out in either next year or in the future. And a lot of them, they're all just so different, whether in genre or like visuals or anything like that. So I kind of want to see more variety in AAA, I think. And I'm really hoping that because of Alan Wake 2 and its success, that these companies are kind of more confident when taking certain creative risks and stuff. So I hope that changes and evolves a little bit, but yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Honestly though, I don't even know if there are any. What games are being released next year?
Star Wars. Final Fantasy VII Remake 2.
Oh yeah. Princess Peach Showtime.
Princess Peach Showtime, yeah.
Maybe Metroid Prime 4.
I think next year is the time. Yeah.
I'll second Alicia. I have nothing in particular. I just want more surprises.
Yeah.
Gimme.
You know, there's definitely gonna be stuff that comes out next year that I'm gonna have to play, but I need to beat so many games from just this year. I need to beat Hi-Fi Rush still. Yeah, I think January and part of February will be me cycling between Fallout New Vegas, Disco Elysium, and other games I haven't beaten this year.
So specific games, I have no clue. I have no clue what's coming out in 2024.
Actually, you know what I'm looking forward to? Sonic 3, the movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah!
Hell yeah. Christmas is saved next year.
I just wanted to do some real deep cut post credits thing where they're just like, what the fuck? Is that like, what would be like the most deep cut Sonic thing to pull that would still be realistic?
Stuff from the evil echidnas from Sonic Brotherhood.
But they can't do that.
No,
They
I
can
know,
legally
but,
do that,
but,
no.
but they're gonna live execute
I
a guy who looks
think-
like Ken Penders on screen.
Ken Penders enters in the post credits scene.
Yeah, Ken Penders turns up. There you go.
Knuckles is just like, where's my dad? And he's just like, here I am, son.
I would say what I'm hopeful for next year is more new experiences, more indie games that come out of nowhere and surprise me and make me feel good. And I am hopeful for two things. One, I'm hopeful for games journalism to start catching up. There's this new website, I'm not plugging it, but I've been reading it, Aftermath. It started by like...
Geeta Jackson knows
Geeta Jackson, Nathan Grayson, you know, et cetera, And what they're doing is kind of like to me it feels like the best articles from like when, you know, from like Kotaku and stuff, and like the more personal driven like kind of thing. So for the games journalist industry, I'm hoping for a shift toward that. I think that I'd rather have that than the Game Awards or just like more IGN reviews or whatever. I mean, I don't even read IGN reviews. I don't know why I'm lambasting them, but I'm hopeful that these kind of things become a bigger part of the culture around games, because I think that will push hopefully the industry to kind of be thinking about games a little bit more deeply. Not really the people who make them, but the people who fund or bankroll them. I think the people who make games think about games a lot.
Sure.
And two, I'm hopeful for the industry to kind of catch its bearings and kind of hopefully work towards solving some of these issues that are plaguing it, whether that's crunch, whether that's layoffs. I'm hopeful, maybe this just is Christmas season where you've got hope, that they can start to kind of adjust to these. Because like, yeah, I would like that a lot.
Yeah.
For it to be a little bit nicer of a place for people to work and exist.
I'll leave on one last question, maybe the biggest question of all, which is who's going to voice Shadow the Hedgehog?
Urkel.
They're gonna get Urkel
Yeah, Lil
back
White.
for a callback for the fans, are they?
Yeah.
That would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going with you, Lil White. Do that.
Yeah, I think he could make a voice that is probably more like, at this point.
Fair enough.
He just haven't proved himself yet.
That's true, yeah. No one's given him a chance, and you know...
Yeah, no one knows yet.